Welcome back, and in the next couple of minutes we have now switched focus to matters 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. There's something that happens each and every year, and a lot of countries do observe this just to underscore and also to look at the milestones that have the countries and governments have taken to address the issue of SGBV, which is rampant, and especially now that we have COVID-19, mental illnesses. But let me rope in my guest, who is the program's manager at the Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health, Gordon Ochieng. Gordon, karibu sana.
Asante sana, pleasure.
16 days of activism. I want to put it into the Kenyan perspective. What have we been doing? It was going to be culminating the 15th of December, right?
No,
10th of December.
Yes.
So what have we been able to do, and what are some of the challenges? Let me just rope them in. Challenges that you have realized that we have in the country in addressing gender-based violence. I remember I had a conversation on radio where a woman was saying that he has undergone the same thing for 8 years, but because of the culture and how people just take things, and because of maybe lack of knowledge, she didn't know that this was quite bad, and she could even institute criminal charges against her husband.
Yeah. So as we are commemorating 16 days, it is important to note that there are still quite a number of challenges. First of all, the day calls for actions towards elimination of all forms of gender-based violence. But you note that even though there are still cases of gender-based violence within the community, one of the greatest challenges has always been that the understanding of gender-based violence as it is, the idea or the perception or the narrative has always been that it is a women affair. And as a result of that, you've seen that even the participation of men as allies as allies towards addressing or mitigating gender-based violence that has still been weak. We know that at the communal level, there are still structures that arbitrate issues that are related to gender-based violence at the communal level, and this is, of course, is negative to the spirit of justice. For survivors of gender-based violence, because when these cases are addressed at the community level, then they're not able to go through the justice system. Of course, you know that what that leads to. And one of the other challenges that survivors of gender-based violence are still not accommodated easily at the community level. There is still stigma that is associated with that, and I think it is also very important to mention that in terms of prevention and response at the community level and even at national level, that has not yet been as strong as it is supposed to be. We have policies, of course. The government is very strong. They've made very good proclamations about gender-based violence, but there has not been a very deliberate attempt towards ensuring that all forms of gender-based violence are eliminated. They've tried coming up with the polycare, of course, but you know that is at the police station level. But in terms of having personnel who are specifically trained and able to address and to support communities to ensure that the full length of justice is taken care of, that is still inadequate. But at the same time, we also know that there are costs that are related to gender-based violence. Is it at the health system? Is it at the community level? Is it at the individual level? The costs that are involved in all these things are still making us not be able to ensure that we are eliminating all these forms of gender-based violence. And I think those are some of the challenges as it is. But primarily what I would want to say is that it would be very, very important for us as a nation to prioritize issues that are related to GBV or gender-based violence, just as in the same length that we prioritize security. For example, you note that when the president talks about insecurity, or when he talks about something that related to security, generally in the country, the Minister of Interior will take it upon himself to ensure and actually will address the nation and say that from tomorrow ABCD will take place. The president recently, when he was, I think it was a launch of administrative justice something report.
Yes, the day before yesterday.
Yes. He very well talked about ensuring that FGM, which is one of the forms of GBV, is eliminated by a certain time. But you see, that is a presidential decree or a proclamation at that particular level. Do you see the Minister of Gender and Gender wake up, for example, and say from tomorrow I'm developing a multitask force to address, or a multidisciplinary team to address forms of GBV. So to me, I think as a country, we need to give it the necessary attention, just like any other insecurity matter that is within the country. I also need to say that climate change, for example, is one of the factors that exacerbate forms of gender-based violence. For example, if there is no water in a particular place because of drought, then in some communities women are made to travel for a longer period to go and fetch water. And in the process of moving or even going to school from one direction to the other, there is always the potentiality of being violated, and I think that would be very important for us as a nation to have a very serious multidisciplinary effort towards ensuring that all forms of gender-based violence are eliminated.
And it's a good thing that you've mentioned about this challenge, a big challenge when you talk about accommodating the victims. I remember there was a program to ensure that we have safe houses for victims of GBV. We have safe houses for some of the victims of FGM.
Yeah.
Do we have, and where are we as a country?
Of course, there are attempts. For example, I know government has the witness protection agency. There could be an act around that. But you know, like I said initially, there could be even safe houses for the same. But does that necessarily become the solution? You know, GBV has trauma in it.
Yes. And
GBV, the way we look at GBV, we look at the physical form of GBV, but there are so many elements around gender-based violence. There is emotional, there is a physical, there is a psychological, psychosocial. So there are so many elements around GBV, but then all these forms cannot necessarily be addressed through a safe house. There is also law, by the way. For example, the Sexual Offences Act 2006 should be reviewed, has provided mechanisms of how these things should be addressed. But in terms of ensuring that the execution of Sexual Offences Act is done to the latter, that does not happen, because you still hear of communities saying that we took this person to the police, but then after 2 days, this person was released. And when these people are released back to the community, you already note that in terms of ensuring that the witnesses are protected and the witness are taken care of, that becomes also weak, and that becomes indeed intimidating to the survivor. So yes, I would say that there could be an attempt towards having safe houses, but that does not necessarily mean that that is preventing forms of gender-based violence. It could be a response, yes, but it is a very small response towards ensuring that we are eliminating these. And that is why we are calling for stakeholders to come together, and specifically also government, to boldly talk about these issues and to come very strongly. I would prefer to see, especially when the ministry, line ministry that is associated or linked with issues related to gender, proactively work towards ensuring that there is elimination. And that would mean that calling on all sectors, including CSOs, to work together, and even the communities to work together towards ensuring that there is prevention, not just responses.
And it's a good thing that you're mentioning some of the challenges that we have, but there are some even challenges that I think we can overcome them, like creating awareness. There are some people who do not know that whatever you're doing to the other person could be and is gender-based violence. I gave you a practical example where somebody didn't know, thought because of the culture and lack of knowledge. That is why perhaps he or she is undergoing some of the things and still persevering and staying in the marriage or staying in the relationship. Where are we in creating awareness? We don't have, I'm quite sure right now as we speak, we do not have advertisements everywhere, posters, radio, television, even on phone, WhatsApp, and other social media platforms. This could be a good avenue to create this awareness.
You know what happens with when people think that it is normal, for example, in communities, a woman who's been battered and is living because of the children. We know that issues of GBV are also issues that are related to inequalities. And in the patriarchal society, in some instances, has normalized the negative masculinity that has been used to portray and subject and to create imbalances within our communities, and through the use of power, which then is portrayed maybe through in any form of gender-based violence, that then there is control. And I gave you an example of food insecurity, for example. If in a certain community you've heard of where men have battered their women simply because they were not able to be given food. And you see, in that community, a woman is cultured to understand that maybe being battered is portraying love, and that is how the patriarchal society in that particular area has created that norm. You see, that is a harmful traditional practice. That is a harmful practice that should not be practiced. And we cannot say that people are not aware. People are aware. The awareness that we create is not necessarily so that people understand that what they're doing is wrong. Because the truth be said, that you as a man, you love your mother as much as you love your daughter. You love your daughter as much as you love your grandmother. But the same woman and the same other person that you are violating is equally somebody else, mother, daughter, sister, etc. So why do you find it easier to protect? Do you need any awareness to protect your mother? I don't think so. So in terms of, for example, femicides that we keep on hearing, that is also another way, that is another form of violence against women, which should be eliminated. People are easily murdering or killing their spouses or even their girlfriends, but rarely do you hear that I had an issue with my sister or even my mother until it has led into death. So to me, it is a narrative that must change. That if it is about gender-based violence, it is not just about women, but it is about men, the community coming together to ensure that we are protecting the rights of women and even girls within a particular society, and we are holistically addressing the challenges that women are experiencing in a community.
And in your organizations, kindly tell us some of the actions that you have taken to assist victims of GBV, and mostly when it comes to informal settlements.
Yeah, so in our organization, we have approached it in two ways. We have response and we have prevention. So in terms of prevention, we are working with the informal sector, with the informal communities to conduct message awareness. We are conducting community behavioral interventions that are meant to change the narrative from looking at gender-based violence as a normative issue within the community to trying to change the perceptions. And we are working with these communities. We are listening to them as one of the values that we use at TICAH to ensure that then the communities are able to come up with better ways of addressing that. As TICAH, again, we're also working with communities within Kajiado as an example, where we are engaging the community leadership, including women, to look at their cultural practices and to look at what then is good that can support the rights of women, and then to look inwardly and look at what are some of their cultures that are, of course, retrogressive to the rights of women. That is some examples that I would give you, but at the same time, in terms of response, we have a program that has a hotline where people, or especially girls and young women, are able to call, and it is through this particular platform where then they're able to be referred to different mechanisms and to which they can be able to access the services.
Would you share the number?
I will share the number, not right now, but before we end, I should be able to share the number. Yes.
And actually, looking at the mental, we were with Dr. here and said that mental illnesses are quite assisting or boosting cases of gender-based violence that we are witnessing, and the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated everything. How has the situation been?
Yes, mental health is a national issue. I think many players have talked about mental health. But the mental health, yes, it is true, but we know that mental health as it is within the community are triggered by so many other factors. And one of them, for example, if trauma is something that women who've gone through gender-based violence experience. And you know, for example, with the trauma, you can never say that you are healed out of trauma, because once in a while, based on what you went through, you are likely to be triggered back to either remembering what happened, and that can create some other fears around that, and that can lead into a mental health situation. So what then I would say is that yes, mental health is a very, very important factor, and integrating mental health in measures that seeks to mitigate all forms of gender-based violence, and ensuring that that is part of the treatment care for survivors of GBV. That would be one great area.
Your final word, we are celebrating 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. What are some of the events that we should expect and some of the processes as we wind up?
Yeah, so right now, different stakeholders are using these 16 days to create and advocate for the elimination of gender-based violence. And I know that there are people, for example, who've done community-related dialogue and conversations, just to ensure that at the community level we are able to ensure that different stakeholders are coming together. And as we are saying, this is a day, this is a campaign day that then seeks to galvanize different stakeholders to be able to take action. So there is community dialogue or conversations, there are art programs that are taking place in different places. There are also petitions that have been done to different stakeholders, especially government, to ensure that then there is action that is taken.
Thank you so much, Gordon Ochieng, who is a Programs Manager, Advocacy Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health. 16 days of activism. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's continue this conversation on social media. My name is Njue. Do have yourself a blessed afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.